Well, welcome to Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. As Evan always says, that means it's time for Breakfast with Bill. We feel a little lost without Evan today, who's out on vacation.
Oh, I thought he was sleeping in.
No, he's out on vacation with his newborn and his new family. God bless Evan, and hope they're having fun and being safe. It's so good to be back with you guys here on a Tuesday morning and talking a little more today about micromanaging and then what that means from motivation. So last week, Matt, we talked about micromanaging, what that means and the fear that's associated with it. I like your point when you say if you think you're micromanaging.
Probably aren't.
Yeah, if you think you're micromanaging, you aren't. Usually the people that are most afraid of micromanaging are the ones that aren't doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that, one takeaway from last week. Another thing to think about is this concept of it's not really micromanaging, but it's loving the other enough to help them be successful. That's our job, right? And when we flip it from managing to leading, it gives us a little different perspective, right? Because managing makes us feel like I'm managing someone's behavior. I'm in their life. We're a leader, and we talked about the root words, the roots of the words, and managing means to maintain the status quo, where leadership means to take someone on a journey. So if you're worried about micromanaging, if you're worried about that approach you're taking to your team, think about how much we all need leadership and flip it to being a leader.
Mm-hmm. And then from a salesperson perspective, we talked about a few studies and, the fallacy that good salespeople, great salespeople, like to be closely managed. They like that connectedness. They like to understand the mission and how their results are leading to the cause. And people that might want to hide, they like seldom management, right? Which is not being managed.
That's right.
So don't assume that someone's on target or someone's a great salesperson that, we could just step back. Yeah, you can give them a longer leash on certain things. I think you earn that. But at the same time, they still want that connectedness. They still want to be managed, even closely managed, was one thing that we talked about. The flip side of that, did you have something?
No, I was just on that, those people that want to be closely managed, they want to be connected to the business. They don't want you to check in on every task they're doing, but they want to be connected to the vision and know that there's meaning behind the work because they're usually highly motivated.
Yep. And then just to transition quickly, so we talked about last week, basically, I'm afraid of being a micromanager. But also I get quite often the last couple weeks, managers, leaders, owners saying, I shouldn't have to micromanage. I shouldn't have to do that. If I have to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is, hold them accountable in many ways, then I have the wrong people. If they don't do that as a professional salesperson, I shouldn't have to do that. And so what are your thoughts on that? Because I think that's like the other side of the coin in micromanagement that we always get.
Right. So, it goes back to parenting the child you have, right? So parenting the child you have versus the one you want or the one you were means leading the team we have, not the ones we want or the ones we were. And when we hear that, I shouldn't have to do it from owners or leaders.
I didn't need that.
It's because they're saying, I didn't need that, right? And they're saying, I didn't need that when I was, well, of course you didn't because you're a different person. But why are you holding someone else that was created with great dignity and might have, greatness inside of them? Why do you hold them to the same standard as you? We don't want everybody to be a second-rate version of you. We want to help people become the best versions of themselves. And sometimes people need, in fact, most people need accountability. Accountability is the one thing we all need and none of us want because it makes us be mindful. It makes us do sometimes things that are uncomfortable and don't want to be done. It's a lot easier to sleep in, or it's a lot easier to coast. It's a lot easier to act busy by doing certain things that aren't necessarily revenue generating activities, but they're not hard. It's a lot easier to call people that like you, existing clients. It's a lot easier to stop in and visit a prospect that will always warmly welcome you and always accepts your donuts, but doesn't ever buy from you. That's easy, right? And as a leader, we need to help people stretch. We need to help them get beyond what's easy, to do what needs done, to do what's necessary.
I think it's all about meeting people where they are. And do we know as leaders and as managers where our people are? Exactly. And I think the other thing it comes down to is managing expectations. Very often when we hear that I shouldn't have to do that, I didn't need that, they're professional salespeople, we shouldn't. After you dig in a little bit and I start asking some questions about, well, what expectations? What does success look like? Have we spelled it out? Do we have proper meetings, to hold them accountable? Or is it just when the numbers go down? Are we celebrating success as well? It's usually not there because they didn't manage expectations. There are assumed expectations. There are expectations in their head that they felt since they didn't need it. They didn't need to portray it or talk about with salespeople. So, I think that's the 1-2 punch on that side of the coin with micromanagement.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because that's the other reason why people usually don't give the leadership their team needs, is because being a leader's hard. Like George Bush, like Saturday Night Live, when they were portraying George Bush years ago, said being president's hard, right? Well, being a leader's hard. You have to do things that are uncomfortable as well. So usually when leaders are saying, I don't want to micromanage or I don't want to dig in, what you're really saying is, I don't want to have difficult conversations with my people. I don't want to have the difficult conversation around a failure to meet expectations or the failure to do the right revenue generating activities on a consistent basis. And when you do that, you're robbing your people of the leadership they deserve and the leadership they need. So if you're avoiding micromanaging because you're afraid to actually have the difficult conversations and be the leader they need and they deserve, be honest with yourself about that, right? Conversely, if you're a salesperson who is avoiding management and is avoiding the interactions with your leader and is avoiding doing the right things because you'd rather coast, be honest with yourself about that too. If you're going to the same prospects that gladly take your stop by or gladly take your phone call time after time, be mindful of that, right? This isn't hard, folks. We want to hold ourselves to a standard. As Coach Mike Tomlin likes to say, the standard is the standard. We need to hold ourselves to a standard and deliver. And a lot of this comes down to motivation. What is your motivation? And we find that motivation is actually the single greatest. Now, motivation being measured by desire and commitment. Motivation is the single greatest predictor of success in sales. And if you're the great fallacy in sales is that all salespeople are motivated by
money.
They're not, right? The stats actually tell us it's pretty split.
I have those stats. So there's 3 types of motivation, going back to Objective Management Group, Dave Curlin's assessment that we utilize, assessment and evaluation for new salespeople and then also current teams. So you can be extrinsically motivated, which are money things, which you just mentioned. You can be intrinsically motivated, which is the part of being something bigger, satisfaction, mastery, a job well done. And then recently they added, I forget when, over
2 years ago.
Yeah, the last couple years, there's a new one, a third one that entered the equation. That's altruistic. And that's really being of service to others. And so we get into these compensation discussions probably weekly. Hey, I need to motivate my team. Can you put together a comp structure that can make them do the right thing? Because, compensation should drive motivation. And everybody assumes their entire team is extrinsically motivated, money, and if not, it's a bad thing. So long-winded, but let me get into the stats. So there was 1,000 people when altruistic first came on board 2 years ago. So the first 1,000 people, they sent out an article about this. 47% of those 1,000 were intrinsically motivated.
Roughly half of the sales
47%
was intrinsically motivated, meaning not money motivated.
25% were extrinsically motivated.
Wow.
25. And then 13% were altruistic. Now, I wasn't a math major. That doesn't add up to 100, but the rest you can have a balanced in the assessment. And so 47 intrinsic, 25 extrinsic, 13 altruistic. And, that was from a couple years ago. But from our time doing these with clients, that's pretty darn accurate still. Yeah. And I'd say extrinsic's about 25%.
Right. And so every time we change the comp plan, every time we put a spiff out, right? A spiff being a temporary comp plan bonus, whatever, where, do this, earn $1,000. Every time we put one of those together, we're addressing, we're motivating, we're changing the behavior for 1/4 of our team. 1/4 of our team. In an industry where most of us assume, everybody is money motivated. Mm-hmm. Everybody would be motivated by that bonus or that change in comp plan.
Because you were.
That's right. Because as a leader, you were. Because when you were in the field, you were money motivated. And if you're an entrepreneur, guess what? You're money motivated. You're driven as an entrepreneur, and you project that same motivation style onto your sales team when all of them don't fit it. Now, Matt mentioned those stats. He did not mention that the 25% of people that are extrinsically motivated, money motivated, are higher performers, because they're not. You can be an incredibly gifted salesperson and be intrinsically motivated, meaning by attaboys, recognition, doing the right thing just because you excel in life and you like to do the right thing, or altruistically motivated, meaning you're motivated by service to others, doing the right thing for someone else. You can be an incredibly gifted salesperson.
So how do we talk about the spiffs, and we get this question a lot. So 25%, I get it. My team's only 25% extrinsically motivated. How do I motivate, the other 75%?
Well, that's where it's so critical to connect to a why, right? Because, we could say 25% of people are motivated by money. 47% of people are motivated intrinsically. 13% are motivated altruistically. The rest are a blend.
Yep.
They're a hybrid.
Balanced.
Exactly. Yeah. Balance between intrinsic or extrinsic, or extrinsic and altruistic. But it's about connecting people to their why, because 100% of people are driven by a why, right? We all have a why. And, Matt and I today, as we were prepping for the show a little bit, we talked about one of our favorite salespeople we've ever worked with. And this is an individual who was doing pretty well. He was hitting his number, but he wasn't ever blowing it out. He was average. And he was a relatively average salesperson who seemed very content. Mm-hmm. And we needed him to be more, because we knew there was more there. And this is a client that we worked with in the past, and is fractional sales leadership for this client. And it was funny because I connected with him one day and I said, what's important to you? Like, you can do this, you can do that. And if you do these things, look at the accelerators in your comp plan. I immediately went to the money motivation, and I shouldn't have done it. And he was like, I have enough money. I'll never forget. He looked at me and goes, I'm good. We live a very comfortable lifestyle. I was like, oh, so you don't need more money? He was like, no. I said, oh. Well, I said, let's just say you did this and you made another, because he probably made about $80,000 a year. Very, very nice living. And I said, what if you made another $25,000 a year? What would you do with that money? And he said, oh, I would fund mission trips for my church. Without hesitation, he said it. I said, oh, tell me about that. And he got all excited, right? He got all geeked up, saying, oh, I'd be able to do this. And, we've always wanted to go on a mission trip so we could go do it. And I'd be able to fund this, and I'd fund that, and I'd give that money. I said, so you're telling me if you made another $25,000 a year, you'd give it away? He said, yeah. I said, well, aren't you kind of robbing those people that have been called to that lifestyle? Aren't you robbing the missions of the money you could be giving them? And he said, yeah. Mm-hmm. I said, so let's put together a plan for you to hit this number, and you can do these things. Well, I was amazed that his performance took off. Mm-hmm. Remember? His performance took off. He started hitting his number. He started making this more money. And the following year, I'll never forget, like we had a, reset the goal, whatever, annual meeting, all that. And as I'm sitting with him, I said, how'd this past year go? How do you feel about it? And he had such fulfillment, right? For being able to do this thing that he was now called to. And he knew was part of his calling. It was incredible to see the level of passion that he brought into that conversation and the level of motivation. He never was going backwards because he had taken on a commitment. He had taken on a responsibility for these other people now that he was not going to fail. It was beautiful to watch, and it all came to just connecting him a little bit to his why.
So salespeople out there, what's your why? Let's think about that. And if it is just, money, what are you going to do with that money? If it's your son, what exactly are you going to do to benefit your son? It's taking that second, third, fourth step of, okay, one of our favorite questions, tell me more, right? Tell me more. So go do this exercise. What's your why? And go 5 levels deep. We've actually done that quite a bit in goal setting at the beginning of the year, talking about the why. And, our job is not to just settle at my mom or community. Okay. What exactly does that mean? Tell me more about that.
I had this conversation last night with a client over dinner, and we were talking about his future and where he's at. And he shared with me how personally he's pretty comfortable, but he knows now that like his son's school's paid for. And now he wants to get to a point where his son's master degrees, masters would be paid for. And then helping his son set up and have a little bit of money in case he wants to start a business and do these things. And he said, I'm now focused on the next generation. So I could go, like he has go home money essentially, where he can go home if he wanted to and ride it, out into the sunset comfortably and quietly. But he wants more for those he loves. So that's his why. He gets up every morning to give his son, in this case, he has one child and it's a son, to give his son, the next generation, a better future than he was given, right? And not that he's done incredibly good things, but it's about, if that's what you're into, if that's your why, is helping the next generation, helping those you love, start at second base versus, in the batter's box like some of us did. How do you do that?
Were you even in the stadium?
Maybe the on-deck circle we started, right? But we were trying to get a ticket into the game. So, but it's how do you give them what they need? How do you connect to those people? I've told the story before about a salesperson I had with me one time, and I couldn't seem to get him excited about anything. The only thing that excited him was the prospect of getting engaged. So we put together a plan that said, if you want to get engaged at Christmas, you need to do this by this date, which means you need to sell this by this date, because you need a commission check. You need to have all your commission checks cash by what? October to be able to buy a ring for December, do these things. Do that for yourself.
Yep.
If you're a salesperson, what's your why? As Matt said, when you start thinking about, well, it's, to give my family a better future. Okay. Tell me more. Dig down a little bit. What's that better future look like? What's that mean? How will you know you've been successful? And when you go through those 5 layers, when you go through that examination of conscience almost, you find the path. You find what really motivates you. If you're a sales leader or business owner, your people deserve that, right? You don't have to make their dreams come true. All you do is give them the path, give them the tools to make their dreams come true. And you owe it to them to help them through that process. You owe it to them to help them set meaningful goals, to identify why those goals are meaningful and what they're hoping to accomplish through attainment of those goals. So that's what, again, started at micromanagement last week. Flip it. Become an enabler, become an empowerer, not an enabler, an empower of your people. Become a leader, because that's what leaders do. They empower others to achieve greatness. So that's what our people deserve.
Well said. So the one takeaway from today, find your why. Go 5 levels deep. Don't be afraid to timestamp it. Don't be afraid to be specific. I know somebody that did this activity, and he has it printed out. And every time I do a video call with him, I see it in the corner, and it sits there, and it gives him motivation that when he has to go make some cold calls or he has to have an uncomfortable conversation, he's able to turn to the right, do it, be in the moment, do that next right thing, be in that activity, simply because he knows the end result and he knows what he's going for. So
that's incredibly powerful because, when you're sitting there and, if you're in an industry where you need to make cold calls, or you're in an industry where, you have quarterly sales goals that you need to obtain, or monthly. When you hit that lull, and we all hit the lulls, right? But when you hit that lull, if you have an anchor that you can come back to, and in this case, it's something written on the wall. When you have that anchor that you can come back to and read and say, oh yeah, I'm doing this for my 3 kids, or I'm doing this so that I can get engaged in December, or I'm doing this for whatever it might be, that's your why. I'm doing this to help fund charities that are very important to me. And I've been given the gift of check writing, right? Because that's an incredible gift. A lot of people say, oh, I want to go off and I want to do this work or this charitable work or whatever it might be. We're not all called to quit our day jobs and go do charity. We could develop our own little ministry of check writing for people. And that's the gift you've been given. So find your why, right? Find that thing that moves you and motivates you and go start it, because I can tell you, none of us were built for mediocrity. We weren't built to coast. We were built for greatness. You were built for greatness. And if you attack today and you start to find your why today, and you start to understand what motivates you today, and you start to understand what motivates your people today, you're going to have a brighter tomorrow. So thank you for checking in with us again. We appreciate that. As always, if you have any questions that you'd like us to address, please submit those to us at evan@telericogroup.com. That's Evan, EVAN, @telericogroup.com. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for being with us.
Have a
great week. God bless.